What would you do if you are pregnant and attacked by more than 4 dangerous men at night after your husband traveled? The movie begins by showing a man, Mr. Satria, driving fast through a dangerous road up a hill to reach his house as he was scared something had happened to his wife. Reaching home, he asked his maid if his wife was okay and she assured him she was. Upstairs, he found his wife engrossed in a book. She reassured him that everything was fine. She wanted to share the news that the doctor had confirmed her pregnancy after 5 years of trying for a baby, and she wanted to spend more time with him. She suggested accompanying him back to the factory where he worked. They did not know their staffs were listening to their conversations. They both headed to the factory, where Mr. Satria left his wife with the receptionist while he discussed with 2 men seeking another raise, just 3 months after the last one. He explained that he couldn't grant another raise so soon, and reluctantly, they left. The next day, the couple went to the mosque together for morning prayers. At work, Mr. Satria received a call from his boss, who requested him to go to Japan on behalf of the company. Despite initial hesitation, Mr. Satria agreed after much persuasion. Without wasting time, that night, he packed his luggage with the help of his wife and promised that he will always protect her and their unborn child. At the factory, 4 workers discussed their late hours and the need for money. One of the men, Jonal, suggested that they should rob Satria's house, especially now that he's gone to Japan. Umar, one of the men, objected, but he was teased for allegedly avoiding the plan because of his crush on Suzzanna. Umar clarified that he didn't want Suzzanna to get hurt and reluctantly agreed to join them. They decided to execute the plan the next day when Suzzanna and her helpers went to watch movies, providing an opportunity to steal the car they desired. The following day, Suzzanna and her staff went to the movies, leaving the house unattended. The 4 men, with their faces covered, entered the house and began searching for things to steal. Umar, however, took it too far by checking Suzzanna's wardrobe and even sniffing one of her underwear. Meanwhile, Suzzanna started feeling queasy and decided to leave to go home. Before leaving, she instructed her helper, Mia, to stay and enjoy the movie while she went back alone. After making it home, Suzzanna, unaware of the lurking danger, changed into her nightwear. Meanwhile, the rain started pouring, and her staff wouldn't be back for some time. Umar, watching her through a space in her wardrobe, saw an opportunity to alert the others. As Suzzanna drifted off to sleep, Umar went downstairs to inform the rest that they needed to leave. However, a mistaken key press on the piano jolted Suzzanna awake. Curious, she ventured downstairs to investigate, prompting the men to hide in various places. Eventually, she spotted them by the window, ready to jump out. Attempting to escape, she found herself pursued by the intruders. Despite their efforts to stop her, Suzzanna managed to break free and ran outside. Jonal pursued her, and in a desperate attempt to defend herself, Suzzanna grabbed a stick. In the struggle, she was accidentally stabbed with the stick. The situation escalated as the face covers of the intruders were revealed, and Jonal insisted they couldn't let her go because she had seen their faces. In a moment of tension, Suzzanna defended herself with a rock, hitting Jonal's head. A potential disaster was averted when Umar intervened to prevent Jonal from causing further harm. In a panic about the potential consequences, Umar urged the others to keep quiet and instructed Gino to return to the house and clean up the scene. Stressing the importance of making Suzzanna's disappearance seem natural, Umar, Jonal, and Duduan were tasked with lifting her body, digging a grave, and burying her. As they poured sand over Suzzanna's face, Duduan, in a moment of panic, claimed she wasn't dead. In response, they sternly insisted he continue burying her, threatening the consequences of prison if he didn't comply. Suddenly, Suzzanna jolted awake, realizing it was all a terrifying dream. The ringing of the house phone startled her, and she answered to find her husband apologizing for his abrupt departure. Touching her back, Suzzanna discovered blood on her hands, making her realize the nightmare might be real. Overwhelmed, she dropped the call, screamed, and locked herself in her room. That night, her staff watched a scary movie, and one of them mentioned Sundel Bolong, a vengeful spirit of a pregnant woman who dies. Unbeknownst to them, Suzzanna listened in fear. Later, as Duduan prepared to sleep, he saw Suzzanna with a bloodied back. His terrified screams filled the air, and each time he opened his eyes, she mysteriously disappeared. Continuing to see Suzzanna's face with blood oozing from her mouth every time he closed his eyes, Duduan experienced increasing terror. Umar, entering the room, asked about the issue, and upon hearing Duduan's account, Umar became angry, demanding that Duduan pull himself together. The next day at work, Duduan, now very sleepy, was on the verge of falling into a dangerous machine when Umar intervened, saving him. Umar sternly reminded Duduan to gather himself and not arouse suspicion due to his erratic behavior. Duduan insisted that he was sure it was Suzzanna and speculated that, as a Sundel Bolong, she must have been pregnant. That night, in the staff quarters at the factory, Duduan was about to sleep when he heard a knock on his door. Opening it, he found Umar with a lady named Maya, introduced as a masseuse. While waiting for Maya to fetch oil and a cloth, someone else entered and began working on Duduan's back. Complaining of pain, he assumed it was Maya. However, upon hearing Maya's voice at the door and discovering blood after touching his back, Duduan saw Suzzanna. Terrified, he screamed "Suzzanna" and ran out, waking other staff members. Umar and Jonal pursued him, urging him to keep quiet. Duduan insisted he had proof, claiming Suzzanna had peeled his back, but they reassured him there was nothing there. The following morning, as Suzzanna's staff ate breakfast, one of them discussed a rumor about a factory staff member who had seen a ghost resembling Suzzanna. They kept discussing whether they were working for a ghost, noting Suzzanna's strange behavior for some time. One night, Duduan, dozing off in his room, heard Suzzanna's voice calling his name. Following the sound, he ventured outside, but she remained elusive, leading him towards the factory. Yelling for her to reveal herself, he finally spotted Suzzanna, and fear gripped him. Despite his protests, she just watched him. In a tragic turn of events, Duduan got entangled in the wires connected to a machine. After struggling, the machine's blade severed his head. Gino took Umar and Jonal to see his uncle, a priest. The uncle, seemingly asleep, suddenly mentioned Suzzanna. Gino urged them to leave him be, and when he jolted awake, he asked why they killed her. Gino explained it was a mistake, but the uncle revealed they had intended to harm her. He informed them that Suzzanna had become a Sundel Bolong seeking vengeance and was waiting for her husband. Describing the Sundel Bolong as one of the most angry and vengeful ghosts, the uncle explained they couldn't directly harm a person but could manipulate their minds. He gave them a chain, advising them to use it when they encountered Suzzanna to protect themselves. Back at home, Suzzanna looked at her wedding picture, recalling a conversation with her husband about being ready for loss. She asked him if he would be prepared when he lost her or their child, to which he responded that he would never be ready. Suzzanna echoed the sentiment. Suzzanna stared at her wedding picture, tears streaming down her face. Meanwhile, Gino, Umar, and Jonal slept in the same room. Jonal awoke to the sound of his name being called. Trying to wake Umar and Gino, he received no response. As he ventured outside, the door shut behind him, leaving him unable to return. Following Suzzanna's voice to the kitchen, Jonal grabbed a knife for defense. In the kitchen, Suzzanna turned on the stove, causing everything to shake. Jonal, now with the knife, urged her to reveal herself. Panicking, he chased after her. Umar and Gino, awakened by the commotion, decided to investigate. However, Jonal, mistaking Gino for Suzzanna, stabbed him repeatedly with the knife. Umar shouted to stop Jonal, realizing the tragic mistake too late. Gino's final words expressed a desire for his mother's health. In another part of the house, Suzzanna's gardener and gateman discussed whether she was a ghost. One of them mentioned Mr. Kazan's belief and declared he was leaving that night. They decided to confirm if Suzzanna was a ghost with the help of Mia, the house help. The gateman initially suggested using a shroud taken from a dead body to see a ghost, but they opted for a different method, unwilling to wear the shroud themselves. He then brought out a mirror, and they convinced Mia to use it under the pretext of waking Suzzanna for prayer. Despite Mia's insistence that ghosts don't sleep, they remained unconvinced and pushed her into the room. Attempting to use the mirror, Mia accidentally dropped it. The two men then covered their faces with the shroud, discovering that Suzzanna was indeed a ghost. Terrified, the three hastily packed their belongings and went to Suzzanna's room to offer flimsy excuses before fleeing. That night, Satria returned from his trip and found Suzzanna playing the piano. She asked him to have a bath, and in the morning, she informed him that she wasn't feeling well before he went to pray alone. After the prayer, a couple informed Satria about rumors circulating regarding Suzzanna haunting two men who were found dead. Confused, Satria asserted that it couldn't be true because his wife was at home and well. Jonal and Umar go to see Gino's uncle for help. The man is devastated upon hearing about Gino's death, and he becomes angry when they offer him money because, no matter the amount, it wouldn't bring Gino back. He conveys that Suzzanna has overstepped her bounds and is meddling in things she shouldn't. The man informs them that Suzzanna's strength comes from the house she still lives in and the love she receives from her husband. He emphasizes that to weaken her, they need to burn the house and kill her husband in front of her. Umar shares his plan with Jonal, and the next day, he calls Satria's work phone, informing him that his wife is dead and buried by the jasmine plant. Satria, angered, demands to know the caller's identity and arranges a meeting. Umar points out to Satria that he should question why his staff left and why Suzzanna stopped praying. Upon returning home, Satria persuades Suzzanna to read the Quran with him. As he starts reciting, Suzzanna screams, causing the windows to shatter. Disturbed, Satria rushes to the garden, the location mentioned by the caller. After digging, he discovers Suzzanna's lifeless body. Holding her, he begins to cry, regretting not being there to protect her. Satria continues to cry while holding Suzzanna's lifeless body close to his own. He returns to the house and, in anguish, asks her spirit to leave, denying that his wife is a ghost or a murderer. Umar gathers the villagers to march to the house and burn it down. Suzzanna pleads with Satria not to send her away, stating that he is all she has left, but he doesn't listen and shuts the door in her face. Devastated, she goes to where her body lies and begins to cry. Jonal approaches her, attempting to use salt, but she laughs, revealing its ineffectiveness. She slips back into her lifeless body, taking advantage of it to strangle Jonal, who calls for Mr. Turu, Gino's uncle. Mr. Turu arrives and manages to trap Suzzanna. The villagers, arriving at the house, begin throwing fire torches at it. In the chaos, Satria encounters Umar, who promises to explain everything but suggests they perform a ritual to send Suzzanna back to the ghost world. Tricked into going to Mr. Turu's place, Satria is taken to a room where Suzzanna is tied up. Immediately upon seeing Satria, Suzzanna insists that he has to leave, claiming they were the ones who killed her. Satria, however, dismisses her words, as he had been told she was a demon, not his wife. Mr. Turu advises Satria to close his eyes, signaling to Umar. They begin chanting, and cautiously, Jonal enters the room with a knife, ready to kill Satria. Suzzanna manages to convince Satria to look into her eyes, revealing Jonal behind him. Reacting quickly, Satria shoves Jonal away and follows Suzzanna's command to pull the knife from her head. As the knife is removed, she gains more power, prompting Mr. Turu and Jonal to run away, leaving only Umar. Suzzanna disappears, chasing after Mr. Turu and Jonal, while Umar and Satria engage in a fight. Suzzanna directs Mr. Turu into a path where a tree branch impales his head, causing him to die. Inside, Satria gets stabbed by Umar, but he retaliates by turning and slitting Umar's throat. Now, Jonal is the sole survivor, running in fear of Suzzanna finding him. Jonal hides inside a shack, peering through a hole to see if Suzzanna is approaching. Suddenly, he spots her, and the shack violently shakes. Sticks start to penetrate from above, stabbing Jonal continuously. In a panic, he rushes out, pleading with Suzzanna to spare him, expressing his fear of death. Suzzanna informs him that he has been dead since the day they all buried her and her baby alive. Using her supernatural power, she pushes him into a grave and covers it, burying him alive, mirroring the cruel fate they had subjected her to. Satria searches for Suzzanna, finding her in a weakened state. In a moment of shared grief and remorse, they both cry and apologize to each other. Suzzanna disappears in Satria's arms, leaving only her bloodied dress behind. Suddenly, Satria feels pain in his back, remembering he was stabbed. Recollections of the good memories he shared with Suzzanna flood his mind before he falls to the ground, meeting his death. Both of them are buried, and their house staff join others for the funeral. Tears flow from everyone present as they mourn the tragic deaths of Suzzanna and Satria. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and subscribe. I would also appreciate a comment because it helps like you can't even imagine. It's a new channel and every bit of support counts.